Welcome to the Deep Dive, the show where we take the dense source material you need to know and really break it down into something you can actually use.
That's the goal.
Today, we are diving into the administrative law that governs something absolutely critical for any patent owner. We're talking about how you keep your invention alive.
That's right. We are exploring the foundational rules for patent upkeep right out of the Manual of Patent Examining Procedure. Specifically, we're in Chapter 2500, and we're starting right at the beginning with Section 2501.
The introduction to maintenance fees?
Exactly.
Maintenance fees. I mean, they just sound like boring paperwork, but missing one can turn a multi-million-dollar asset into, well, public property overnight.
It can, yeah. And our mission today is to really understand that legal framework. We'll go from the statutes all the way down to the specific offices at the USPTO that are, counting the money and watching the clock.
So where do we start? There has to be a law behind all this.
Always. And it starts with the statutory authority itself. The power for the USPTO to even charge these fees comes from Congress in 35 U.S.C. Section 41.
Okay, Title 35. That's the bedrock of patent law.
It is. And Section 41 is basically the rule that says, hey, we'll grant you this exclusive right, but you have to pay to keep it.
All right, let's unpack that. And I think we need to start with a huge clarification, right? The who and the when. Because if you just got a patent, you might think these fees apply to everyone.
And they absolutely do not. That's probably the most important exception to remember right off the bat.
So who pays?
Maintenance fees apply only to utility patents. So the patents that protect how something works or how it's made.
And there's a date attached to that, too?
A very specific one. The application has to have been filed on or after December 12, 1980.
Why that date? Just a line in the sand.
Pretty much. That's when Congress brought in the whole maintenance fee system, partly to help fund the USPTO's operations. It's a historical cutoff.
But the big takeaway for people today is which patents are exempt.
Yes. If you have a design patent, so something that protects the way an item looks, its ornamental appearance, you're exempt.
No fees.
No fees. Same with a plant patent. If you've invented a new plant variety, you are completely exempt from maintenance fees.
So the designer who patents the cool shape of a new water bottle, they're in the clear.
Totally.
But the engineer who patents the self-sealing valve inside the cap.
Now they have an ongoing obligation. And it's a very structured one. It's not like you're paying a fee every single year.
Right. It's not an annual subscription. So how does it work?
It's a commitment you have to meet 3 times over the life of the patent. And these are rigid, non-negotiable payment windows. They're all tied directly to the date your patent was granted.
Okay, let's nail those dates down for everyone listening.
Okay, so the first payment is due at exactly 3.5 years after the patent grant.
3.5. Got it.
The second one comes at 7.5 years. And the final payment is due at 11.5 years.
So let me ask a practical question. What if that date, that 3.5 or 7.5 year date, falls on a Saturday or a federal holiday? Do you get to pay on the next business day?
That's a fantastic question, because in so many other parts of patent law, the answer is yes, but not here.
Oh.
MPEP Section 12501 is crystal clear. If you miss that exact date, you immediately trigger the penalty phase. There's no automatic extension for weekends or holidays on that initial due date.
Wow. Okay, so that brings us to the consequences. You miss the date, and there's a safety net, but it sounds like it's a short one.
It is. It's a 6-month window.
Yeah.
That's your grace period. If you miss the due date, you have exactly 6 more months to get that payment in.
But it's going to cost you more.
Oh, yeah. Paying during that grace period isn't free. The source material is very clear that you're paying a surcharge, and it can be pretty substantial on top of the fee itself.
The cost of being late.
Right. But the real disaster happens if you miss the initial date and you fail to pay the fee, plus that surcharge within the 6-month grace period.
What happens then?
At the end of that 6 months, the patent automatically expires. It's dead in the water.
Game over. Just like that.
Yeah.
Unless you have a really, really good excuse, which I guess brings us to reinstatement.
Exactly. Once that 6-month grace period is over, your only path back is to petition the director of the USPTO. The director can, in fact, resurrect the patent.
Bring it back to life.
They can restore it as if it never expired. But, and this is a huge but, there's a very strict gate you have to get through. The delay in payment has to be proven to have been unintentional.
Unintentional. That sounds like a really high bar. It's not enough to just say, oops, I wrote it down wrong on my calendar, is it?
No, not at all. Simple negligence, like I moved offices and my filing system got lost, that probably won't cut it. The USPTO wants to see proof that you actively intended to pay. but something genuinely unforeseeable or uncontrollable got in the way.
Okay, so let's walk through an example. Let's say a small company has one person, a patent administrator, handling everything. And that person, without the CEO knowing, has a major personal emergency and completely misses the 7.5-year deadline. The 6-month grace period comes and goes. The patent is gone.
Right. So maybe 8 months after the grace period ended, the CEO finally realizes the patent has lapsed. They have to file a petition and they have to provide a ton of detail.
With evidence.
With evidence. Sworn statements, maybe office policies, anything that proves the lapse was totally due to this specific unintentional breakdown. If the director is convinced, then poof, the patent is reinstated.
And it's like it never happened, legally.
Legally, the expiration is erased. That's the power the director has. However, and this is where it gets really, really interesting from a public policy standpoint. The moment that patent is restored, you run head-on into a massive caveat, a check on the patent holder's power.
And here it is. This is the big aha moment in this section, isn't it? Intervening rights.
That's the one.
Because even if the patent owner gets their rights back, they can't just pretend the real world stood still while their patent was lapsed.
Exactly. Intervening rights are there to protect the public. Think of it this way. Imagine a plot of land is listed as public and abandoned for 6 months. A developer comes in, invests a bunch of money, and starts building a foundation based on that public record.
And then a year later, the original owner shows up and says, "Oh, my bad, I just forgot to pay my property taxes."
Yes. In the patent world, that developer, the competitor, is protected. The MPEP is explicit. Any business or person who, in good faith, started making, using, or selling the patented invention while it was lapsed is legally protected.
Because they were relying on the official public record.
They were relying on the fact that the patent was expired.
So wait, even after the patent is brought back to life, that competitor doesn't have to stop what they were doing.
They absolutely do not. They can continue the specific things they started doing during the lapse manufacturing, sales, whatever it was, under what the law calls equitable terms.
That is fascinating. It's basically the system telling the patent holder, okay, we'll forgive your mistake, but we will not punish the people who acted in good faith based on your mistake.
It creates a stable and predictable marketplace. It's also a huge incentive for patent holders to be incredibly careful. I mean, even if you could fix the lapse, you might have just created a permanent royalty-free competitor for yourself.
Wow. It's a conditional property, right? If you don't meet the conditions, the public can come in and you can't just kick them out later.
The balance is everything. It's the core idea of this entire chapter.
That commercial side is huge. Okay,
Yeah.
So let's shift gears a little. Let's talk about the mechanics. Who inside the giant machine of the USPTO is actually tracking these 3.5, 7.5, and 11.5-year deadlines?
It's basically a tag team.
Yeah.
You have two key players. First, there's the group focused on the money and the calendar, the maintenance fee branch.
And they're part of the Office of Finance.
That's right. They are the financial guardians here. They handle everything related to actually collecting and tracking the fee.
So processing the payments, verifying patent status.
And most importantly, computing and confirming those exact fee deadlines.
And they're the ones who notify the public when patents are about to die, right?
Critically, yes. They generate the official notices for upcoming due dates and expirations, and they publish them in the official Gazette.
Which is the public record that everyone is supposed to be watching.
Legally, yes.
All right.
If your patent is listed there as expiring, the market is allowed to rely on that information.
And this branch also handles the different fee amounts, right? Like for a small company versus a huge corporation.
Precisely. They handle all the public inquiries about status, and they manage those entity updates. If your company grows from a small entity to a large one, you have to tell them because your fee just doubled.
Okay, but the maintenance fee branch can only send notices if they know where to send them. That brings in the second player.
It does. That's the Office of Patent Application Processing, or OPAP.
And what do they do?
OPAP handles the administrative integrity of the patent file itself, but after it's been granted. So they manage the updates to the file.
So if you're a patent owner, why do you need to know the difference between these two acronyms?
Oh, it's so important.
Yeah.
Because if you fail to update your correspondence address with OPAP,
Then the notice from the maintenance fee branch goes to the wrong place.
and you never get it. If your company moves and you don't tell OPAP, you might miss the notice that your 11.5-year payment is due, and that could lead directly to an expired patent.
But that makes perfect sense. The whole system relies on the owner keeping their records straight with OPAP so the maintenance fee branch can do its job.
It's a necessary division of labor, but the burden is 100% on the patent holder. You have to be proactive.
Okay, so let's bring this all together for everyone listening. MPCP, Section 2501, really just sets the entire foundation.
It does.
You've got the rigid 3.5, 7.5, 11.5-year structure for utility patents. You've got the consequence, which is automatic expiration. And you have that very high bar of unintentionality if you want to try and get it back.
And we can't forget the core legal principle driving it all, the doctrine of intervening rights.
Right.
This whole system is so much more than just a way for the USPTO to make money. It's a legal mechanism that forces patent owners to show that they still value their rights.
The big lesson here is that just getting the patent grant is only half the fight. Maintaining it is an active, ongoing process.
And an unforgiving one. It's designed to balance your private rights against the public's right to rely on the public record. If you're sloppy, the market can and will move in.
I think that's the defining takeaway. That balance is what this is all about.
It really is.
That's a powerful thought to leave you with. And on that note, a huge thank you to Mike Shepard, our creative director, for organizing this entire audio series.
And please remember, this deep dive is for general, educational, and informational purposes. It is absolutely not legal advice, and it was generated with the help of AI tools like ChatGPT and NotebookLM. For real guidance on any patent issue, you must consult the official MPEP or a qualified registered patent practitioner.
Join us next time on The Deep Dive as we continue to peel back the layers of the Manual of Patent Examining Procedure.